At the wedding dinner, she looked at me and said, "I don't think you're husband material. I'm ending this." The words didn't echo. They didn't need to. The room carried them for her. Soft laughter from her relatives, a few raised brows, the clinking of cutlery that didn't quite stop in time. It felt rehearsed, like I'd walked into the final act of a play everyone else had read. I remember the light first, warm, golden, reflecting off crystal glasses and polished plates, making everything look softer than it was. Across the table, she sat composed, almost relieved, like she had finally said something she'd been practicing in the mirror. Her mother smiled, tight, approving. Her cousin leaned in, whispering something that triggered another ripple of chuckles. No one looked at me directly. I was already becoming a story they'd tell later. I felt it then, not heartbreak, not yet, but clarity. A strange, cold stillness settling into my chest. Every small detail aligned, the sudden change in tone over the past weeks, the delayed replies, the way this dinner had been so important to her. This wasn't impulsive. This was planned. And I had just been invited to witness my own humiliation. I've always been the quiet one. The man people assume will absorb discomfort, just to keep the room intact. In my family, I was the listener, the fixer, the one who showed up early and left late without needing recognition. It wasn't weakness. It was discipline. But to the wrong audience, discipline looks like passivity. When I met her, she seemed to understand that difference. She admired my patience, or at least she said she did. Said I was stable, reliable, not like the others. Didn't realize then those weren't compliments, they were classifications. Safe, predictable, replaceable. Her family followed her lead. Polite smiles at first, then subtle tests. Jokes that landed just a little too sharply. Questions disguised as curiosity about my income, my ambitions, whether I was enough for her. I answered calmly, never defensive. I thought respect was something you built quietly over time, but every silence I chose, they interpreted as permission. Every compromise became expectation. And somewhere along the way, I stopped being her partner and became her comparison point. Measured, discussed, quietly diminished in rooms I wasn't meant to notice. Still, I stayed composed, not because I didn't see it, because I was waiting, not for them to change, but for the exact moment they would go too far. It never came all at once. That's what made it easy to dismiss, at first. A comment over dinner, her uncle swirling his tea before asking, "So, you're still at the same position?" The pause after still lingered longer than the question itself. I answered politely. He nodded like he'd confirmed something. Her sister had a way of smiling without warmth. "You're so calm," she'd say, tilting her head slightly. "I don't know how she does it." "I'd be bored," she laughed softly, eyes drifting to my fiancé as if inviting agreement. And sometimes, she got it. Not words, just a small telling smile. Even she began adjusting in subtle ways, correcting me mid-sentence, repeating my points louder, cleaner, as if translating them into something more presentable. Once, when I reached for her hand across the table, she didn't pull away, but she didn't meet me halfway either. Her fingers stayed still, passive. I noticed everything. The glances exchanged when I spoke. The way conversations shifted around me instead of including me. The quiet evaluations happening behind polite expressions. It was never loud enough to confront, never sharp enough to call out, but it accumulated, like fine cracks spreading beneath glass, barely visible, until the structure holding everything together is already compromised. The realization didn't arrive like anger. It arrived like alignment. A week before the dinner, I found the venue booking confirmation, forwarded to her by mistake. Not the ceremony hall, a private dining reservation, labeled engagement celebration, family only. My name wasn't on it. Not even as a guest, just an afterthought in a thread where they discussed timing, menu, and quietly how to handle him. I didn't confront her. I read it twice, then closed my phone and went back to work. That night she called, her voice unusually soft. "Next week is important," she said. "Just be yourself, okay?" There was something rehearsed in the pause before yourself, like even that needed to be managed. That was the moment it settled. This wasn't doubt. It was decision, already made, already shared, already staged. I wasn't walking into a conversation. I was walking into an outcome. So I adjusted, not outwardly. I still showed up on time, still wore the suit she liked, still greeted everyone with the same measured calm they'd grown used to misreading. But internally, something shifted. I stopped preparing to defend the relationship. and started preparing to end it, on terms they wouldn't see coming. I didn't need to raise my voice. I needed to be precise. The next morning, I treated the relationship the way I handle risk at work, quietly, methodically, without emotion interfering with judgment. I reviewed everything that connected us beyond sentiment: the ring receipt, the shared deposits for the venue, the advance payments I had made for vendors booked in my name. It wasn't about reclaiming money. It was about clarity: what was mine, what wasn't, and what could be cleanly undone. I made a few calls during lunch. Short, professional conversations. Confirmations, not complaints. Dates, amounts, policies. Every vendor appreciated clarity. Most of them had seen situations like this before. No one asked unnecessary questions. By evening, I had copies of everything organized. Receipts, agreements, timelines. Not to present dramatically, but to ensure there would be no confusion later. No rewriting of events. No quiet assumptions made at my expense. I even drafted a brief message in my head. Simple, controlled, something that would close the door without inviting negotiation. Then I let it go. At the dinner, I wouldn't argue. I wouldn't defend myself. I would simply respond. And in doing so, remove myself so completely and cleanly that the silence left behind would say everything they thought. I never could. I didn't let the silence stretch too long after her words. Perfect timing, I said, my voice even, almost polite. A few of them smiled, thinking I was trying to save face. That familiar assumption that I would soften the moment for everyone else still lingered in the air. I slipped the ring off slowly, feeling its weight one last time before placing it gently beside her glass. No force, no theatrics. Then I stood, lifting my glass just enough to gather attention. Here's to better choices, I said. The room quieted, not completely but enough. Enough for what came next. I've already canceled the venue booked under my name, I added, almost conversationally. The vendors as well. Deposits are settled. You won't need to worry about any follow-ups coming to me. The shift was immediate. Not loud, just subtle fractures forming across composed faces. Her uncle's posture stiffened. Her mother's smile disappeared, replaced by calculation. I set the glass down carefully. There's nothing left to manage, I finished. No anger, no explanation, just closure, delivered before they realized they needed it. And for the first time that evening, no one laughed. For a moment, no one moved. Then the reactions came, not in noise, but in fragments. Her mother leaned forward first, voice lowered, controlled. What do you mean canceled? The question wasn't about the wedding. It was about control slipping out of her hands. Her uncle reached for his phone, scrolling quickly, as if confirmation might undo what I'd just said. It didn't. The faint tightening around his jaw said enough. She didn't speak right away. She stared at the ring beside her glass, as if it had become something unfamiliar. Then finally, you went behind my back? Her tone wasn't hurt. It was unsettled, like the script had changed mid-scene. I went ahead, I replied calmly. That was the difference. The room, once entertained, now felt exposed. Their laughter had been safe when I was predictable, when I played the role they assigned me. But without that, their earlier amusement lingered in the air like evidence. Because moments like this don't stay contained. They travel, through conversations, through retellings, through reputation. And what began as a performance at my expense had quietly reversed, revealing not who I was, but who they had chosen to be, when they thought it wouldn't matter. I didn't wait for anyone to stop me when I walked out. The air outside felt different, cooler, quieter, untouched by the performance I had just stepped away from. For a moment I stood there, not thinking about her or them, or even what had just happened. Just breathing. Clarity has a strange calm to it. No second guessing. No replaying conversations. Just a clean understanding of what is, and what is no longer yours to carry. On the drive home, I realized something I hadn't before. I wasn't losing anything that hadn't already been taken piece by piece. Respect, partnership, quiet loyalty. Those had faded long before that dinner. All I had done was acknowledge it out loud, in a way they couldn't ignore. The next days were uneventful. A few messages came, some defensive, some carefully worded, but I didn't feel the need to respond. Closure isn't something you negotiate, it's something you decide. I returned the suit, filed away the documents, moved forward. Because in the end, it wasn't about proving them wrong. It was about finally refusing to prove myself to people who had already decided I wasn't enough, and choosing instead to be enough, without them.